all, Kissy Bug here. I wanted to take some time to discuss Stockholm Syndrome and why abuse victims and survivors love their abusers. Perhaps to provide some clarity into why the mastermind is the way he is when it comes to his father. I had hoped to have this video up a while back, but per my usual routine, I spent time researching so I could provide you guys with good information. I personally believe there is a correlation between Stockholm Syndrome and child abuse as well as other forms of abuse. It seems the most affected individuals are those who were in controlling and abusive relationships. They know how they feel defies making any sense, yet they still stand up and defend their abuser. This does not make sense on the social front, but it does psychologically. This is where the term Stockholm Syndrome comes from. On August 23, 1973, two machine gun carrying criminals entered a bank in Stockholm, Sweden. Blasting their guns, one prison escapee named Jan Erik Olsson announced to the terrified bank employees, "The party has just begun." The two bank robbers held 4 hostages, 3 women and 1 man, for the next 131 hours. The hostages were strapped with dynamite and held in a bank vault until finally rescued on August 28th. 2 of the 3 women emotionally bonded to their captors. One became engaged to one of the criminals, and the other started a legal defense fund to aid in criminal defense fees. While the psychological condition in hostage situations became known as Stockholm Syndrome, due to the publicity, the emotional bonding with captors was a familiar story in psychology. It had been recognized many years before and was found in studies of other hostage, prisoner, or abusive situations, such as physically abused and sexually abused children, battered and abused women, prisoners of war, cult members, incest victims, criminal hostage situations, concentration camp prisoners, controlling and intimidating relationships. With children, they yearn and pine for their abusive parents' love and approval. They are desperate for that love. Children will suppress memories even just so that, as adults, they can try and get that love that they have so desperately wanted. Abused children often wind up with PTSD, and even when they grow up, they still don't want to place blame on the parents for the abuse they endured. They can have all the evidence in front of them, but if they have bonded emotionally with their abuser, they will deny anything was ever the abusive parent's fault. We see that with the mastermind and his siblings, right? I'm not saying that worshiping the old man is the way to go, because we all know it's not. I wanted you guys to understand why I feel this way about how the kids defend the old man, and why my opinion on their attitude towards their father differs a bit from public opinion. Emotionally bonding with an abuser is a strategy for survival. As a child abuse survivor, I can identify with this. I remember as a child trying to force myself to love my stepmom so that the abuse wouldn't be so bad next time, but that wasn't the case. It seemed the abuse just got worse as time went on. But in my mind, I thought if I acted like I loved her or even forced myself to love her, that maybe she wouldn't want to abuse me any longer. Now please try to understand, these kids growing up in a house with the old man for 18 plus years, and this is all they know. We know from their personal videos where they discuss some of the abuse that they had endured. They were afraid of the old man. They may have felt their mother failed them because she didn't pack up and leave with them. But remember, she was just as abused, if not more so. She may have felt there was no way out, which is how a lot of domestic abuse victims feel. And I feel if the extended family knew of this abuse, which we see that in some of the old videos, they should have jumped in and removed the mom and the kids from the abuse. Of course, no one did that. I think if they had, there would be no show about the old man. I still stand by my opinion that the abuse for profit is very wrong. The Stockholm Syndrome reaction in hostage and/or in child abuse situations is so well recognized at this time that police hostage negotiators no longer view it as unusual. In fact, it is often encouraged in crime situations as it improves the chances for survival of the hostages. It also ensures that the hostages experiencing Stockholm Syndrome will not be very cooperative during the rescue or criminal prosecution. Law enforcement personnel have long recognized this syndrome with battered women who fail to press charges and bail their battering husband or boyfriend out of jail, and even physically attack police officers when they arrive to rescue them from a violent assault. Stockholm Syndrome can be found in family, romantic, interpersonal relationships. The abuser may be a husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, father or mother, child parent, or any other role in which the abuser is in a position of control or authority. I do wish that this would be public knowledge so that we can better understand victims and survivors of abuse. Most people don't think Stockholm Syndrome when we speak of other forms of abuse, and that is probably because it was referenced from the hostage situation I spoke of earlier. I feel that being armed with the knowledge on why children react this way even into adulthood, we wouldn't want to condemn them for how they feel. Instead, encourage them to seek professional help, which is very important. It is very important to understand the components of Stockholm Syndrome as they relate to abusive and controlling relationships. Once the syndrome is understood, it's easier to understand why victims support, love, and even defend their abusers and controllers. Every syndrome has symptoms or behaviors, and Stockholm Syndrome is no exception. For example, in child abuse situations or hostages, positive feelings by the victim toward the abuser or controller. Negative feelings by the victim toward family, friends, or authorities trying to rescue, support them, or win their release. Support of the abuser's reasons and behaviors. Positive feelings by the abuser toward the victim. Supportive behaviors by the victim, at times helping the abuser. Inability to engage in behaviors that may assist in their release or detachment. Stockholm Syndrome doesn't occur in every hostage or abusive situation. However, the length of time one is exposed to abuse and control and other factors are certainly involved. It has been found that 4 situations or conditions are present that serve as the foundation for the development of Stockholm Syndrome. These 4 situations can be found in hostage, severe abuse, and abusive relationships. The presence of a perceived threat to one's physical or psychological survival and the belief that the abuser would carry out the threat. The presence of a perceived small kindness from the abuser to the victim. Isolation from perspectives other than those of the abuser. The perceived inability to escape the situation. Perceived threat to one's physical and psychological survival. In threatening and survival situations, we look for evidence of hope, a small sign that the situation may improve. When an abuser or controller shows the victim some small kindness, even though it is to the abuser's benefit as well, the victim interprets that small kindness as a positive trait of the captor. Remember, I said I tried to love my stepmom to help my survival and to escape abuse. However, when she was positive towards me, with usually my father around, it was a glimmer of hope, even if it weren't going to last, that maybe things would change. When you are abused, time seems to drag by slowly. You think of any way you could make things better so the abuse will just stop. Children are naturally trusting, and of course particularly so of their parents, so evidence of hope is gratefully received and welcomed. They are quickly won over once again, and so the cycle continues. It never stops, folks. Not unless extended family steps in, or the Child Protective Services, or the Department of Social Services as it's now called. Abusers and controllers are often given positive credit for not abusing their partner when the partner would have normally been subjected to verbal or physical abuse in a certain situation. This is particularly effective when dealing with children. During the relationship, the abuser or controller may share information about their past, how they were mistreated, abused, neglected, or wronged. The victim begins to feel the abuser or controller may be capable of fixing their behavior, or worse yet, that they, the abuser, may also be a victim. Sympathy may develop toward the abuser, and we often hear the victim of Stockholm Syndrome defending their abuser. I think I remember something about the old man having a rough childhood, but all the same, he had no right to abuse his own family the way he did. He could have chose to break the cycle of abuse so that his own little family would have been happy and safe and were thriving well, but he didn't. And having a mental illness is no excuse either. There are a lot of people with mental illnesses that don't act like that towards another person. It was his choice, in my opinion. But his kids, they had no choice growing up. They had to deal with all that. Abusers may admit they need psychiatric help or acknowledge that they are mentally disturbed. However, it's almost always after they have already abused or intimidated the victim. The admission is a way of denying responsibility for the abuse. With my stepmom, her excuse to me was, I had a horrible childhood and was abused myself. My response to her was, then why didn't you get help for what you'd been through? And why did you have to abuse me? All she could say was, I don't know. She, to this very day, has not gone to any form of counseling, and my siblings who remained in her custody because she didn't abuse her own kids, sympathize with her. See, there's a pattern. Which is my point about speaking about the mastermind and his siblings. My siblings were left to live with this woman, and now they feel they have to defend her and sympathize with her when she is considered one of the most hated women in the family. And yes, my dad is still married to her. While it may be true that the abuser or controller had a difficult upbringing, showing sympathy for his or her history produces no change in their behavior. In fact, prolongs the length of time you will be abused. In abusive and controlling relationships, the victim has the sense they are walking on eggshells, fearful of saying or doing anything that might prompt a violent and imitating outburst. For their own survival, they begin to see the world through their abuser's perspective. They begin to fix things that may prompt an outburst, act in ways they know that makes the abuser happy, and avoid aspects of their own life that may prompt a problem. If our partner is an abuser or controller, then the majority of our decisions are based on our perception of the abuser's potential reaction, when we become preoccupied with the needs, desires, and habits of the abuser or controller. In severe cases of Stockholm Syndrome in relationships, the victim may have difficulty leaving the abuser and may actually feel the abusive situation is their fault. In law enforcement situations, the victim may feel the arrest of their partner for physical abuse or battering is their fault. Some women will allow their children to be removed by Child Protective Services rather than give up the relationship with their abuser. As they take the perspective of the abuser, the children are at fault. They complained about the situation, they brought the attention of the authorities to the home, and they put the adult relationship at risk. Sadly, the children have now become a danger to the victim's safety. For those with Stockholm Syndrome, allowing the children to be removed from the home decreases their victim's stress while providing an emotionally and physically safer environment for their children. In teens and young adults, victims may be attracted to a controlling individual when they feel inexperienced, insecure, or overwhelmed by a change in their life situation. When parents are going through a divorce, a teen may attach to a controlling individual, feeling the controller may stabilize their life. In this scenario, when the old man divorced the mom, who did the mastermind stand up for? The old man. He didn't stand up for his mom. Oh no. He joined the old man on outing every single thing the mother did wrong. The old man was favored by the audience while the mother was hated on. It called horrible names, with some of the audiences saying that she should die. To survive trouble is to be avoided at all cost. And I think that's what the mastermind was trying to do. He wanted to avoid trouble. Remember, he said to his father, "I shouldn't have to be afraid of you." Truth right there, guys. He was afraid of the old man, and he was so used to trying to survive, and as you can see, he fits right in with a lot of what I have talked about so far. Several types of investments keep us in bad relationships. Emotional investment. We invested so many emotions, cried so much, and worried so much that we feel we must see the relationship through to the finish. Social investment. To avoid social embarrassment and uncomfortable social situations, we remain in a relationship. Family investments. If children are present in the relationship, decisions regarding the relationship are clouded by the status and needs of the child. Financial investment. In many cases, the controlling and abusive partner has created a complex financial situation. Many victims remain in a bad relationship, waiting for a better financial situation to develop that would make their departure and detachment easier. Lifestyle investment. Many controlling and abusive partners use money or a lifestyle as an investment. Victims in this situation may not want to lose their current lifestyle. Intimacy investment. We often invest emotional and sexual intimacy. Some victims have experienced a destruction of their emotional and/or sexual self-esteem in the unhealthy relationship. The abusing partner may threaten to spread rumors or tell intimate details or secrets. In situations of child sexual abuse, these secrets usually amount to something as simple as saying, "I will say you asked for it," or "I know you wanted it," and transfer the guilt onto the child. This is enough to cause such horrific confusion in the child's mind by an adult of power that the child is bound to secrecy. A type of blackmail using intimacy is often found in these situations. The combination of Stockholm Syndrome and cognitive dissonance. This is the feeling of uncomfortable tension which comes from holding two conflicting thoughts in the mind at the same time, produces a victim who firmly believes the relationship is not only acceptable, also desperately needed for their survival. For reasons described above, the victim feels family and friends are a threat to the relationship and eventually to their personal health and existence. The more family and friends protest the controlling and abusive nature of the relationship, the more the victim develops cognitive dissonance and becomes defensive. At this point, family and friends become victims of the abusive and controlling individual. Importantly, both Stockholm Syndrome and cognitive dissonance develop on an involuntary basis. The victim does not purposely invent this attitude. Both develop as an attempt to exist and survive in a threatening and controlling environment and relationship. All of us have developed attitudes and feelings that help us accept and survive situations. We have these attitudes and feelings about our jobs, our communities, and other aspects of our lives. As we have found throughout history, the more dysfunctional the situation, the more dysfunctional our adaptation and thoughts to survive. The victim is engaged in an attempt to survive and make a relationship work. Once they decide it doesn't work and can't be fixed, they will need our support as we patiently await their decision to return to a healthy and positive lifestyle. We want to be so angry at the mastermind for his choices on profiting from the old man's abuse, but at the same time, we need to remember that him and his siblings' lives were anything but easy with the abuse they all endured, and that we see them speak about from time to time on their personal channels. Again, not an excuse for profiting from abuse, because I don't agree with that, but perhaps maybe since the old man was always an abuser, maybe the mastermind felt that he should just go ahead and record it. I'm sure at first it was an innocent, "Hey dad, take a look at how you behave," but when he decided to share it online, people found it funny, and that's how everything came to be. It's disgusting, but true, I feel. Remember, if we're aggressive by threatening, withdrawing support, or pressuring, we become a threatening force, not the controller or the abuser. It actually moves the victim to support the controller. Sadly, the more of an ordeal they experience, the more bonding takes place, and as noted with both Stockholm Syndrome and cognitive dissonance. If it's a child you fear is experiencing child abuse at the hands of a parent, you are duty-bound to report it to the authorities. Make sure you are ready to offer that child a home. They will be angry as they may not want to be separated from their parents no matter how abusive, but safety trumps all, and you must be prepared to weather the storm. Authorities are well equipped to support you in this endeavor. Whatever you do, do not stand idly by and do nothing out of fear of causing offense to a son or a daughter when a child's safety is at risk. No child should be invisible. There is absolutely no excuse for standing by and ignoring suspected child abuse. We all have a duty to the innocent. We are their voice, and they will have been successfully and horribly brainwashed to believe that their parent has the right to treat them the way that they wish. When the victim decides to end the unhappy relationship, it's important that they view loved ones as supportive, loving, and understanding, not as a source of pressure, guilt, or aggression. Alright guys, so there's my thoughts and some research to further explain why I feel differently than the masses to some extent. I hope this has helped you and has opened your mind to a different way of looking at the mastermind and his siblings. Perhaps now you are better equipped to understand how children could love an abusive parent. I would love to see your thoughts and feedback. As always, you know that is welcome here. I love you guys, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye bye.